So, why South Korea tried for martial law? What's the grand strategy here? And who's behind it? I'm just going to tell you guys straight up what this is all about and give you guys my analysis of how this is going to play out. But let's just start from the kind of the beginning and the propaganda that we've all heard so far. What we've heard so far for many years is that China's going to come after Taiwan, and that the war that's going to happen, and it can happen any second, is that China is going to. These girls are getting louder as soon as I start filming. So, uh, uh, China's going to launch a war and try to invade Taiwan and take it the same way they took Hong Kong, and they're going to do it at any moment. Now, the basics of geopolitics is that China's a land power. They barely have a blue water navy as it is, and to invade Taiwan, they need a lot of technology that they just don't have right now. So they don't have the capabilities to fully take Taiwan. But when it comes to something like Hong Kong, as a land power, they can literally march straight through and take Hong Kong. And they could have for many years, but they waited until, you know, until basically near the handover. And we all know what happened to Hong Kong. South Korea, on the other hand, I've been saying for 9 years now, something like that. And I've checked online for all those years. I'm the only person saying that South Korea is going to be destroyed uh, before Taiwan, a long time before Taiwan. And it's not just China that could do without South Korean industry, it's also the United States. And then what we do is okay, so this is based on basically Mackinder's land power theory and the idea that China's a land power. Well, so think about it this way: you try to take Taiwan, and then South Korea launches on Beijing. You know, that would cause a massive headache for you if you are engaging in that type of stuff. You want to make sure that you take out South Korea, defang South Korea at least, make sure that they're at least your friend and they're not going to mess with you while you take Taiwan. So we're establishing that. Now, that's really important. That's basically the first thing I want you guys to understand. The second thing is uh, we're all aware that this is a massive grand strategy war between the United States and China. Everyone's aware of that. And so both of these countries are actively going around trying to either make friends, try to get their allies on board or their minions that they control, like Australia and Canada and Britain, uh, all going out there and trying to trade, trying to figure out. Right now, every country on planet Earth is trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they're aware of how serious this is. So what we've got here is we have Russia taking Ukraine, and uh, a large proportion of the artillery and a whole range of other products that they need to wage this war against Ukraine is being manufactured in North Korea. Now, there's been no warnings from the North Koreans against the South. There's been no threats from Beijing towards South Korea. In fact, 2 weeks ago, and I bet you guys aren't aware of that, you guys can fact check me. 2 weeks ago, this leader in South Korea that just announced martial law and tried and failed met with Xi Jinping to discuss this exact problem. And Xi Jinping was making it very clear we need high level diplomatic talks basically on a daily basis, and we want to avoid war with South Korea. We want to make sure that there's no problems with South Korea. And this leader, who is clearly working for the United States, uh, is trying to sabotage the peace. And if you're a South Korean, do you think you want to just like go to war with China and North Korea and destroy your all the technology that, well, the West, the white people gave South Korea, by the way? I just thought I'd throw that in there. The beautiful city that they've built with our technology since 1950, since it was crushed. These people, were like running around in the dirt when we gave them their technology. You can hear the bitterness in my voice. Um, and these high level talks, Xi Jinping was making it very clear that he, wants to avoid war, and the majority of South Koreans want to avoid war as well because, well, they don't want to die, and they're hyper aware of this issue. And so this martial law, when when he came out and he said, "I need to announce martial law," his excuse was that North Korea is coming after us, and the North Koreans are coming, and they're coming to get us. So I need to enact martial law. I need to turn the whole country into a dictatorship, and we need to prepare for war with North Korea. That's basically what this guy tried to do yesterday. Who was behind that? Obviously, the United States. Now, why would they do this right now? Okay, so this is part two. We've got Russia and Ukraine in a war. We've got NATO getting involved. We've got Poland getting involved, and Russia threatening to bomb Poland as well and suck many other NATO countries into this war. Uh, it's very serious right now, and just over time, this battle, this war of attrition, is going to continue for many years until there's some form of conclusion. Throughout history, when this has started, it has ended only when either Russia or Britain are totally destroyed. Now, that's the hard facts of the situation that we're dealing with right now. What's the likelihood of Russia taking out Poland and maybe Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, maybe bombing the crap out of them, turning them into just a mess, taking out, what is it, Moldova, maybe take out Romania as well while you're at it, and just take out a whole bunch of Eastern European countries, create a big buffer for Russia? What's the likelihood that France, Germany, England, the United States, and all of its allies accept that? Zero. Uh, that's when, the dial gets turned up. The idea that they're going to sign a peace deal with Russia and allow them to get away with that is quite low. So if some of you guys out there think that Donald Trump's going to come out of nowhere and sign a deal and save the day, it's not going to happen. I just don't see it happening at all. This is only going to get ratcheted up over time. We've also got, the Israelis surrounded by enemies, and the United States is committed to defending Israel in the Middle East. Um, and Israel is totally isolated worldwide. Um, it's widely accepted by the majority of human beings on planet Earth that they're committing a genocide. So, what we do under these circumstances is some of the brightest minds in the world are now calculating which countries have access to what resources, how can they keep their economies running for an upcoming massive battle, a massive offensive, technically World War III. They're they're planning it right now how to deal with this possible war, and they're calculating where's the factories. They're calculating which countries have advantages, which countries have the best logistics, demographics, which countries can do a multitude of different things. And if things continue the way they are right now, defending Israel, no matter what you think about what they're doing morally or whatever, they're outnumbered, and it's going to cost the United States a lot of money and a lot of manpower, um, and it's not going to work. While simultaneously, you've got the Europeans taking on Russia, and they're kind of outnumbered as well. They're kind of like outnumbered, and when you look at a country like China, you've got North Korea, uh, basically sitting back and uh, running the supply lines, feeding the troops if they need to, sending in troops if need be, uh, artillery shells, refueling them, rearming them. And China's the factory that is defending these countries while they are the flashpoints. And the United States has clearly taken all of that into account, and they've realized that if Russia just keeps doing their thing, just keeps plowing away, smashing away, grinding away, eventually, the economies of Britain, Germany, France will collapse. They will be forced to sign some sort of a peace deal, and all of Europe will be basically under the control of the Russians, thanks to the support of the Chinese and the North Koreans and the Iranians. There's an X factor that I need to tell you guys about as well. And the rest of the money is flowing in to uh, a forever war that's been going on in the Middle East, basically forever. And this is draining the United States. Uh, the people are becoming poorer, there's less products flowing into the country. The United States is struggling to the point where you've got the leader of the United States literally threatening their allies to give them more money and do their bidding because they're struggling as well. So you can see cracks in the American empire right now. And what they've realized is that peace with South Korea will allow the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, the BRICS nations to take over Europe and the Middle East, and the United States will eventually have nothing left. And so, this is where they're at. They're at a point where they realize that they have to actually go to the country that is funding, supporting, rearming, refueling the BRICS nations, and that's China. China's fully aware of it as well, and that's why 2 weeks ago, China had high-level meeting with the leader of South Korea. I don't need to say his name because he's irrelevant. He's a puppet of the United States. And so China's doing everything in their power, because why would they want a war with North Korea now? They're too busy dominating in Europe and dominating in the Middle East and dominating in Africa, by the way. Dominating in every region of the world, and the United States. And if you have a look at South America, China's starting to dominate over there as well. They just built one of the world's largest ports in Peru. So they're starting to build economic ties with South Americans. And so the American South Americans, so the Americans are sitting back, looking at all of this play out, and they realize that if they just wait and watch this happen, it's they're just going to get pushed out of Europe, get pushed out of the Middle East, pushed out of Asia eventually, just through having peace, and they can't allow that. And so at this point, why can't they allow that? Let me answer that question, because that's going to be a very big question, possibly that everyone's going to be asking. Why can't they just allow that? Because I've heard this argument over the years. Why doesn't Australia just allow their population to shrink and the baby boomers to get old and we'll be good? Well, part of the reason why they need a lot of people, um, you know, it's to keep the country running basically. And if everyone's old, any country could just drop 100,000 troops there and literally take over the whole country. They can't allow that to happen. They need more slaves, basically, and that's why Australia is getting a lot of immigrants. The United States, if their empire was to crumble, they were to be kicked out of even Africa, the Middle East, Europe, and the United States doesn't control those regions of the world anymore, then, well, the, the United States dollar, their financial system, which is basically everything the United States is right now, is just a financial system. Their entire system that they built, 80, 100 years ago, it will crumble and it will disappear. And the ability for the United States to just sit back and just import whatever they want basically for free will stop overnight. Um, that country would have to actually become self sufficient, and they're just not in a position to do that. And so, this is why a lot of countries continue to try and prop up their empires, because allowing the empire to just dissipate is way too painful, because their standard of living will legit collapse overnight. And everything they built from the beginning will just disappear. And so they realized that they need to launch a war. And even though it was failed, just because it failed doesn't mean that they didn't try to do it. There's an argument out there that, oh, it failed, so they would have known that it was failed, so they wouldn't have done it. Well, no, they didn't know that so many South Koreans would have went nuts, got on social media, turned up to the parliament, and been willing to fight the military. Even the military probably was thinking, whoa, we don't really want to get nuked by China, do we? We don't really want to get destroyed by North Korea, do we? And so there's a lot of. So, from America's point of view, if we're just looking at this cold heartedly, it is a great strategy for them to just push the South Koreans into a war, and that would damage China economically, distract them, take a lot of their resources, and they'll be focusing on South Korea instead of sitting back, sitting pretty, sitting rich, doing really well, expanding, helping out Russia, helping out the Middle East, and just expanding all over the world. Now, from the United States point of view, and this is how cold-hearted this strategy was, even from the leader, this Korean leader. It's insane when you think about it, and you really understand how this works and what they're really trying to do here. Is that he was literally wanting to just create a South Korean meat grinder, the same as Ukraine, where the majority of, well, everybody in South Korea will lose their standard of living, even if it isn't too good at the moment. A large percentage of them will get out, and the rest of the men will start dying in this massive meat grinder. And that will be a bit of a pain in the butt for China, but it's not going to do too much. But it'll be a distraction, and it'll give the United States a little bit more wiggle room to see if they can dominate in Europe or in the Middle East, while China's kind of distracted on their border. So, and that will take away a lot of resources. But they've obviously have people out there calculating right now that they cannot win in Europe and they cannot win in the Middle East right now if things remain as they are. And so, what do I think is going to happen? I think the United States, and I've said this before, because what just happened obviously was going to fail, or even if it did work, it wouldn't work to the extent that they they think what the South Koreans, the K-pop guys that like cover themselves in makeup and dance in boy bands are going to be like, yeah, let's go to war and destroy everything that we've built to take on, you know, literally probably one of the hardest nations on planet Earth to take out, North Korea. Um, just throw away their lives for what? It's just not going to happen. The only way that they're going to get involved would be the same as when Russia bombed Ukraine and invaded Ukraine the first time. That's the only way that I can see that the South Koreans would get involved in any sort of war over there. And so, therefore, if if Xi Jinping's doing everything in his power to uh, constantly have talks with the South Koreans and uh, commit to peace, which, so in a way, and a lot of you guys might struggle to understand this, right now, the Chinese are actually the good guys for the South Korean people, that is. But as Westerners trying to keep our empire going, it would be great for us if we could suck the South Koreans in, and it'll cause China a whole world of pain, distract them, and give the United States the ability to pull a victory out of the hat somewhere. Now, this is just like the basics of what's going on right now and why this martial law in South Korea was not a joke. It's legitimately life or death for the Australian people, the South Korean people. More specifically, South Korean men, because a lot of South Korean women, like in Ukraine, will be on the next flight out of there, living in luxury elsewhere. And the South Korean men will be trapped. They'll lock down the borders and they'll legit just be thrown into a meat grinder to their death, the same as what happened, what is happening and has been happening in Ukraine. So, when you look at it from that point of view, and you're just going to have to trust me that the numbers obviously are in favor of China and Russia. Um, but here's the X factor. If you're not convinced that the United States cannot do anything, and this is why I've been a China bull from day one, everybody out there has been saying, oh, China's going to collapse because they're not creative. China's going to collapse because they need Western markets. China's going to collapse because they're becoming a hermit kingdom with the firewall. More recently, what have I heard? China's going to collapse because of the ghost cities. Um, China's going to collapse because they're communists and they're not creative. How many times have I heard that BS? They're not creative, and that they just take orders. So they can't create new technologies, and so therefore they're never going to dominate Asia. Um, More recently, the most famous one that you would all know, oh, China's going to have demographic collapse. Oh my goodness. And that's the funniest one. And it's the funniest because Peter Zion said it on Joe Rogan, got famous for it. And I realized, because we know that the average IQ of humanity is like 100 and down, I realized that it's probably lower than that. Because think about it, you've literally got the most populated country on planet Earth. And Peter Zion is out there, and all these other geopolitical fools are saying that the most populous, the largest population on planet Earth is going to disappear. That's like, what? It's like the most populated country in the world with a population 300% larger than the United States is going to disappear because everyone's going to die of old age tomorrow or in the next couple of years. And the majority of people out there bought that one. It's like hilarious. And it shows you how stupid people are. It's just not going to happen. Like, it's just look at the numbers. So that's why. I've been blocked by Peter Zayan on Twitter, and and the people that talk about that are total fools, and they can't count to five. So I can't count to three. So what's the X factor? China's not collapsing. China's suing for peace. China is opening up diplomacy with its neighbors, trying to avoid any troubles. The X factor is India. The other X factor that we have to deal with right on our border is Indonesia. Indonesia is technically part of BRICS now. Indonesia is technically an ally of China, pretending to be on the side, on the fence. Kind of the same as the South Korean leader was pretending to be a legitimate, independent South Korean leader when he was meeting Xi Jinping, when really he was working for the United States the entire time. Indonesia is part of BRICS. Indonesia is there to defend China and defend Russia, but a high level leader is India. And where does India stand in this? So you forget about the entire global system and the allies and Russia, China versus the United States. Forget about all of that when you look at it from the number one or the second most populated country on planet Earth, India. Large population, it matters. It's one of the biggest economies in the world. It matters, and whatever side India takes matters. So, a large percentage of Indian arms come from Russia. India has a long history of needing Russia to balance and help them out politically worldwide for a very long time now. The Indians, in fact, when Russia first went went to war with Ukraine, the Indians immediately came to Russia's aid and started helping them out. What can we buy from you? How can we help you? Russia's been helping India out for a long time. And now India's there helping out Russia. So if anything gets out of control, it's not just China, it's the two largest populations in the world, two land powers, both need Russia to survive. Run those numbers, Peter Zayan. You just need men on the ground. And if anything was to get out of control, you could see a couple million Indians on the ground in Ukraine real fast just to make sure that Russia's okay. How's the United States going to deal with that? That's an X factor that they just cannot afford. Technology cannot overcome those numbers. And then we have the triple X factor, which is Indonesia. It's got a larger navy than Australia's already. They're they're the 5 to 6 times the population of Australia with an economy the same size. Their military is like 10 times the size of ours. Their infantry, men on the ground in Indonesia. That's not including the navy. Their air force is larger than ours. We might have better technology, but like you just swarm like 20 shitty planes, they're going to take us out. Or 20 shitty boats, they're going to take out a high-tech ship that we spent 30 years buying or building with American technology. So if anything was to get out of control, you know that the Australian dictatorship will start sending you to your death, you know? And that's where the recent lockdowns, there was a good test, the jails, the IDs, the cashless society, so that if you don't obey them, you're not going to be able to buy anything. just all of the things that Australia is doing right now are gearing up for what I just described to you. And we don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but it's quite clear that the United States needs to do something with China, with South Korea, and so hopefully that kind of makes sense, and um, and that's the real reason why the South Korean leader tried to turn South Korea into a dictatorship. Now, what you can look forward to, um, there is another factor too. The um, Another factor here is right now the United States is going through a loosening phase. Financially, they're lowering interest rates. They're going through QE. They have a lot more money to throw around right now, and it just started. So now is the time to trigger a South Korea, right? But if we get through 2025 without any major conflict triggered by the United States, 2026, there's a high likelihood that a BRICS nation will trigger something else. Right when the United States goes through uh, tightening of their fiscal policy, which means they'll have less money to throw around. And if you go back 4 years to 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine just when the United States started tightening. And that's not an accident. Okay. And so that's why just not even January 2025, not even a couple of months after the United States started lowering rates and starting to engage in QT, that they tried to take over South Korea to trigger this war because they're going to have a lot of free money to just throw at the problem. And that's what they're doing right now. They're printing the dollar to try to cause as much trouble around the world to try and hold on to the American empire. That's a simplistic way of putting it. So hopefully that makes sense. It's a little bit of a longer, different version of video that I've made in the past. I probably should have made this one a live video, but that's the way I see the world right now. That's the way I see what's really going on, and everything that happens domestically is very much a geopolitical and international problem as well. So even the IDs that they want to bring out in Australia and monitor everywhere we go, that's also connected to what's happening to us geopolitically. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense. And join the members group if you haven't already. I've got some ideas in there on how to deal with this. And I'll see you guys in the next video.